Hey, I'm Adam Cook. Welcome to the Bite Britain podcast, a show dedicated to interviewing the most successful restaurant owners in the UK, learning about what goes into their incredible menus, but more importantly, what it takes to run the successful restaurant in this day and age. Magu Diner is an independent burger restaurant and takeaway based in Bath. Magoo pride themselves on an incredibly cool restaurant design, but also a menu that makes use of an incredibly wide range of local ingredients. Their sauces are made by hand on site, and if you were just to take one look at their social media, you'll see that it's absolutely no wonder that they've become something of a local sensation. Today, I am joined by founder Leon Dunnett. Leon, welcome to the show. That's a very brief introduction. But perhaps you could just start by telling us a little bit more about the Magoo brand.
Like how it came about?
Yeah. So how it came about, sort of where you started from, and that'd be great.
So, I mean, in terms of I had a very sort of clear, I think, vision for it from the start, and I'd done lots of, I dabbled in graphic design myself, and I sat next to a lot of like really good graphic designers, and there was a really good office in Bath that a few of my friends, and that kind of started mainly when I was doing club nights. And I'm someone that always likes to be on the ground, like with the kind of like in the fight sort of thing. So
because we spoke about that when we first spoke on the phone, didn't we? You have got a bit of a background in music promotion and events, right?
Yeah, which I think, but I mean, funny enough, I got into chefing kind of, I was kind of like quite self-sufficient anyway as a kid, but then I really wanted some Technics 1210s, and
I know that.
Weirdly, I got into this. I took this exam straight as I left school, and things I considered were things like design, food, but not really food. I wasn't really considering food, and sort of like the motoring trade, just because my dad had been sort of involved in that, and then I ended up working in a little French bistro through my friend's mum. And she said to them, "Oh, you know, he's a bit of a rogue, but he's a lovable rogue." And I think, in fact, if it wasn't for that little sort of independently run bistro having that sort of like family sort of approach, and seeing, you know, I was 16, and they were like, the owner, Dave Mott, he was just really like accommodating. He was into music when he was my age, so he was just really like, he could see the similarities. And I think as you get older, you have a natural duty to sort of bring through young people and mentor them. I just think it's that you have a natural instinct to do it.
Yeah, sure.
And now I recognise that, whereas back then I argued with him, I resisted, you know, I kind of, but yeah, so it was originally to get some Technics decks, but then whilst I was working within that sort of that bistro, I sort of thought, yeah, wouldn't it be really cool to have like a kind of American diner crossed with a bistro type thing? And I always could sort of see that the street food thing would become big, like even back then, you know, so I'm like 40, coming up for 42, and I was 16 then. So even back then I could sort of see this sort of path, sort of, but without really seeing it, you get what I mean? I could sort of see it, but not see it, sort of thing. So yeah, when it came to the branding, I knew I kind of had the concept built. Like I said, for years I was building that concept in my head, little pieces, piecing it together. By every little festival I went to and tried a bit of food, or like, you know, most people at a music festival are off their heads, and I was dead sober, because I'm there to either research music or research food, or just the dynamics of how the whole energy of the place is working. So I invested a lot of my time, and also I loved cookery programs as well. And I'd always taken an interest in sort of like lines of design and stuff like that.
I think that's the thing, isn't there? There's a very close, I think there's a very, very close relationship between sort of art and design and food in a lot of cases.
I even think you can even apply like disciplines of sport. And
absolutely, yeah.
Like I did Kung Fu for a lot of years. So I was to apply sort of like disciplines of that to one. And obviously I think the reason why kitchens, you know, they're kind of a little bit kind of army kind of like, is because you have to have that discipline in order.
Yeah, it's like, I get what you're saying.
To have efficiency, you have to have it. It has to be like efficiency, and but at the same time, there's a part that I don't really like. I try to sort of calm the stress, but obviously, sometimes when you have, you know, certain people, a dynamic of certain people, some shifts can be amazing and fun and feel like a breeze, and others, you might have one person that doesn't maybe care about it as much as you do, or the rest of the people do, or if they got their own sort of internal battles going on and they project it outwards, and then that causes this disharmony. And so but yeah, with the brand, so I'd always taken like an interest in the designers I did know, and I was lucky enough to be able to go into their office when I did my first ever club night. I always try and like get as much as my vision in my head out onto a piece of paper, or any way I can that's going to help them like understand and get what, because I think it's very hard to get what's in your head out to someone else, or even out into the world.
So do you have like a specific bit of inspiration, like, because you obviously got all these different areas, you've got like the street food stuff, obviously you're very creative with like you've had a lot of, you know, experience with graphic design, music, all of these kind of creative things, you know, sports, another one. So have you got any sort of like specific, like where did the inspiration for, because the branding is particularly cool and out there, I think, with Magoo. That's something that really shines out. I think the way that you've branded, not just your logo, but even when you look down, there's almost like a style to all of the way that you present all the food images and stuff like that. I mean, where's the kind of the inspiration for the branding kind of come from? Is there anything you kind of like specifically pin it to, or is it just a wide?
I think in terms of, I always like it to be bold, and I always had this thing about when I was doing a club night. That obviously, this is the thing from doing, say, club nights. Like I said, I can apply methods that I've used there doing a fly poster that I know someone in a car needs to see if they drive past at 50 miles an hour. They need to be able to see it at the corner of their eye and go, "What was that? That's Andy C or Kenny Ken," or like, you know, something they can sort of identify with. And that's kind of what I wanted it to be like. You know, I'm a bit like, if I'm trying to build a brand, then sort of nothing's bigger than the brand. It has to all come under the brand. And so in terms of the design itself, I think and then I sort of developed this thing over the years that I feel like, oh yeah, every logo should be in a circle type of thing. And then when I was sort of doing it with my friend I'd known for years, and it was funny because I'd had a few different designers do things with me when I was sort of trying to learn it so I could do it myself. And the first thing I learned to do was just how to make a fly poster for myself, because I couldn't rely, when I was doing club nights, it was way too stressful when I was shelling out 2-3 grand on an artist to rely on someone who was doing it for not much money, who was a mate, who was doing it mates rates, who might not really care. And that's the problem. When it's not your thing, you don't put the same heart in. And well, the same urgency. You know, I think you can put the same heart in. But so it was really important to me to just learn how to do some sort of basic stuff myself.
So I suppose that's a big benefit as well, having those skills, because not everyone's got those skills, right? Not everyone can design necessarily.
Yeah, well, exactly. But and I think you have to have a genuine interest. It's very hard to learn something if you're not interested in it. So having an interest in it, I think, really helps to begin with. And I don't think you should ever try and force something you're not interested in. You know, it doesn't resonate. I think
that's a huge lesson as well. It's like, that's, you know, I think, you know, clearly from what you're saying, you know, the reason that you're in this isn't because you want to, you know, make a load of money. It's actually because you actually genuinely have a passion for it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the money will come, like, if you do it. And ultimately, I think if you're having a good time and you're doing it with passion, it sort of, people always seem to pick up on that.
Yeah,
they always seem to gravitate towards it. I mean, that's what you wouldn't be with a partner if there was no passion, would you? You'd be like, well, that's a rubbish relationship. You'd look elsewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, a big thing with a brand as well. It's like the there's the visual side, but even more importantly than that, it's about how people actually feel, how your brand makes people feel.
Yeah,
With,
exactly.
regard to like your menu, like it seems like quite innovative for, I guess, a UK at least based sort of diner or burger brand. So I want to try and like dig into a little bit more around sort of like the menu. I mean, and the way that you've kind of present it, and I guess the service to some extent. What factors do you kind of feel makes your menu so popular? Because one of the things I noticed, you do like the smash style burgers, don't you?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
really cool. But yeah, I mean, what kind of factors make your menu so great, and like how do you sort of decipher between all the different options that you? I guess being having a lot of design and creative background, I guess it's very easy to come up with ideas. But like, how do you make sure certain ones make the cut or don't? Or
Oh well, that's the thing. It's that part. I mean, first of all, I over sort of like, so before I opened, I was working within a kind of similar food sector, and I remember I worked at my friend's smokehouse, who you know, a really good friend of mine,
nice,
and
yeah.
it was mainly because that basically, so my mum died and his dad died around about like 3 months from each other, and so it was kind of like those sort of life sort of changing moments,
Yeah, sure.
or events. I always recognize the people that are around me, or you know, like now, for instance, the people that I see and communicate with now in amongst this mad particular thing. I feel like, well, there must be a reason they were around at that point. So yeah, so I remember he was just sort of there for me. I mean, it's not like I maybe needed him there or was sort of looking for anyone to be there, but he was there. And he didn't do anything particular, but I felt like he was there. Like when my mum died, and then 3 months later, his dad died. But during the time, he just opened his place, and he was like, look, he knew I'd worked in food, like in this bistro years ago, and he was like, can you just be here, because we trust you, and can you just be around? You don't have to do anything, but just sort of like overlook it, because I would basically, I'd finish my day, he'd finish his sort of day in his smokehouse, and then we'd sort of watch some sort of Marvel film, or you know, we watched the entire over the last sort of 12 years, or it's been of the whole Marvel universe. We watched every single one together over that time, and a lot of it, you know, we'd watch these films after our day had finished. So I was always hanging about there, sort of at the end of the night, and then he might make me a bit of food or something, and then we go watch this film, and then so when it came to him wanting, you know, spend time with his dad, he was, can you just be here? So I was just sort of hanging about quite a lot, and because like I sort of felt this like, oh, I could sort of see areas they could sort of do with the little bit of help, and one of those areas was desserts, because the current head chef there, he was one of those chefs that hates making desserts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't probably that. I know a lot of chefs don't like the desserts.
Yeah, which is funny. I kind of love them equally as much, like as in making them and eating them. So
I like eating them. I definitely like eating them.
but he's I hate making desserts, sort of thing. And so I was just a bit like, right, okay. And I made like a butterscotch pancake with like candied maple pecans, coconut ice cream. It was kind of like Caribbean Thai sort of inspired, with American Diner flex kind of to it, like a fusion of like cultures. Yeah. And I think I think because it was winter and they had a banoffee pie on, I've got this thing about like banoffee pie where I think is a bit of a cop-out dessert. Like, yeah,
it's a very common one, isn't it? I mean, it's not very original, I guess.
You just sort of crush up a biscuit, put some sort of condensed milk and banana on, and then a bit like, no, and there's no baking involved, you know, sort of thing. I'm a bit like,
I know what you mean.
I was a bit like, hang on a minute, it's winter, you should have like a hot version of this. So that's what I came up with, basically.
Right.
But I think on the first shift, it sold really well. And of course, the head chef, I wasn't really stepping on his toes, but yeah, I was filling an area where he obviously didn't want to fill himself. So I've got delivery trying to be delivered. I hope it's...
This is the joys of running a restaurant.
and shall I just go and answer it a second?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, this is real life, real life restaurant ownership.
Right, we're back. That was quite good. It was quite good. I got that delivery actually.
Right, so we're back. We're back live again. So we can cut that short break out.
Well, I don't know. Leave it in there. It's raw and unplugged.
Yeah, true.
It's how it goes down every day in the business. So.
It's real life playing out.
But yeah. So quickly, because otherwise we'll be forever talking about.
Yeah. So I just wanted to just get into, like, you know, obviously your menu and like the way that a brand is just as much about well, in fact more, it's actually more about the way people feel, the way you make people feel. That comes down to the decor, it comes down to your presence that you've got on social media, but comes down to the service, of course, which we'll get into. But I wanted to try and just understand like the menu side of things, the food side of things, that I can see, like when I look at those pictures, it's like pure food porn on your page.
Well,
trying to understand your
it's
creative process behind it, you know.
In the beginning, I didn't want that kind of like Instagram picture. I really just wanted it to be, because the thing is, you kind of, even, you know, that they are real burgers. There's no tricks. You know, obviously you get good lighting, you get good composition. That is key to any photography. And then, you know, you apply a few Instagram filters just to, and I think burgers in particular seem to really respond to those filters, you know. But they generally are, you know, I don't do loads of them, but they generally are the burgers that I made, and a lot of time I make them and I think, oh, that's a good one, so I just snap it. Or sometimes I bake one because like it's a new one, and then I'll eat it myself, you know. So
you taking the pictures on your phone? You doing using a proper camera, SLR or something like that? Or I mean, I'd be interested.
Just on my phone.
Yeah, so that's amazing. A lot of people, a lot of restaurant owners in particular, are often quite scared to, you know, just snap away on their phone. But actually, you know, looking at what you've got here, like, it looks brilliant. Like, you know, it's,
well, I think it adds a sort of like certain, like I said, this I don't want to ever be too contrived with anything. When you're trying to sort of force things out, and that's why sometimes it's like, if you can take one, like, you know, sometimes I'll make one, I think, oh, that's quite a good one. Like, so you can kind of see if something's a good one, and you want it. I've always, like I said, you want to be sort of naturally, you know, let things all sort of fall naturally, sort of thing, rather than you try and like build it perfect, you know. Because I like, you know, the why I like the smash patties as well is because you smash one, each shape is different. It's never going to be the same shape. If you're smashing a ball down, sometimes it's gonna look like Africa or America or Australia and other times it's going to be quite round, you know. But
there is a certain beauty to those imperfections, I think, and I think
exactly. It's like we're all built like that. We're all built with little slight defects that aren't perfect lines. So
absolutely, yeah.
I that's, you know, so in the sense of like the Instagram, it's very much like that. But like I said, I wanted it to have like before I didn't want it to be sold on Instagram, you know.
No, right.
So
that's the other problem as well. If you focus too much on one platform, you know, next year, the year after, there's going to be a new platform that's cool, right? And everyone's going to flock to that. So you don't want to sort of like make yourself too specific to one place. You want to make sure that you've kind of got a very clear understanding of how your brand goes way beyond just one social media platform, right?
Yeah, and I think, you know, in a way, there's an artistry just in sort of like Instagram pictures. I think that's what I find about Instagram, say, over Facebook. It feels a lot more positive than Facebook. It feels more creative. It's about pictures.
Yeah, it's all about the visual side of things, really, which I guess, you know, with your sort of like creative design background, that's kind of fits very, very well, right?
Yeah. So it was kind of just like, it was only, I think, in the last year I decided, right, let's hit the Instagram harder now. Like before, it was just sort of like really basic, normal, not too set up type photos. It was just like, because I wanted people to decide themselves. It's not up for, I'm a little bit of the, you know, like, there's loads of good burger joints around, and there's loads of good food places around. And some of them I wouldn't want to put best or worst. I just put as different. So, and I'm a little bit like, well, everyone's, you know, there's the old Marmite saying, isn't there? Love it or hate it. It's a bit like, it's up for people to decide if they like it or not, I don't want to sell them a false dream, so it's kind of like,
yeah.
let them, but then there's a point where Instagram really works now, because it's part of sort of how our culture is now. So you kind of like,
yeah, you have to pay attention to it. I think that's the thing. And I think that's where a lot of restaurants fall down. They either spend too much time worrying about how they should present themselves, so much to the point they don't end up doing anything, or they actually just don't do enough anyway. And you can't ignore the fact, as much as we all hate it, if you look around the street, you wouldn't look around the street much now because there's not many people around on lockdown, but everyone's just doing this. They're just like this constantly on the trains, on the buses, wherever they are, they're staring at their phone. So, as a restaurant owner or even a brand owner, like, you've got to pay attention to that, right? You've got to play that game.
Well, absolutely. And now we've got phones that are like mini computers. So if like, just as I've been speaking to you, like, I turned most of my notifications off, but I've had a few pop up just in the top screen. So, the people that have them all, so you're gonna, it's kind of like, it's funny. It's like a flyer in, because obviously I used to do a lot of promotion, and I used to do a lot of street work with it, like, as in get out on the street and put flyers in people's hands, put them in every shop. Yeah, like, and then after a while, you just don't have to do it. You're better off instead of spending £100 on paper flyers. It's kind of not particularly good for the environment, it's like, now you can spend £100 on virtual flyers that go straight to people's palms, that they're already looking at the device where it's going.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good point. I mean, I see it so often, and being in marketing myself, a lot of the time when we speak to people with businesses and brands, they've been spending literally like thousands of pounds a month on print advertising.
Yeah,
and only
some
because
people don't even know quite, like, there's certain, like, places in Bath that charge something like, like 250 quid for 500 like postcard flyers. I'm a bit like, online, you get that 5,000 for about 60 quid. Like, so some people just don't have a clue, like, about that type of thing.
No, that's right. And I think people I think that's another big mistake that a lot of it's not just restaurants really. It's anyone with brands. They make the mistake of thinking just because something's worked for years, it's going to continue working, and not moving with those times. Like, the fact of the matter is, you could have a restaurant that's incredible, but if you've got no online presence now, and you're not paying any attention to Facebook, to Instagram, and someone like you comes along who is paying attention, well, guess what? The generation that's on social media, which, to be honest, is quite a lot of generations now, they're going to be paying attention to your brand, and not someone who's putting a flyer under your windscreen wiper.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with the flyer under the windscreen wiper, or the poster on the street. I still think it has, but you've got to embrace all of it now. You've got to kind of, like, if you do go that, I have noticed, if you do go that extra mile and do, like, street promotion as well, it definitely just sort of tops it up that little bit more. But I guess
I think there's a place for it. Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. I just think from a budgetary perspective, you can get a lot of bang for your buck, can't you, online?
You do, like, if you could spend 30 quid and reach sort of like 20,000 people, which is that's crazy. Whereas before, you'd spend, to reach 20,000 people, you'd have to spend about £1,000 on street promo, I reckon. Because I think there was some sort of statistic when they're like, it's like 1% of your flyers, that's what you get the feedback on, or something like really low like that.
Well, and you can't measure it as well, right? You don't know. You don't know if half those flyers end up in the bin, or up, somewhere down the drain somewhere, or whether anyone actually read them, or spent any time looking at them.
I mean, I think that's another thing that I learned with the sort of like the dance culture. Obviously, you get proper music fans. So if you make an attractive looking flyer, they're going to keep it and put it on their wall, and then they're essentially promoting it for you to the 10 friends that come around their house. So that that was something I understood as well in a sense. And like I said, you can take little bits of that philosophy and apply it to areas you're working with food, and so I mean, but I think if you're not getting on board with sort of modern times, like, you know, you can't be sat there scratching your head thinking, oh, why is it not working, sort of thing. It's like,
yeah, I think things change so quickly as well. That's the other thing that you know, what worked even a few years ago now is totally different to what works now. It's just trying to, I think there's part of the struggle really as a business owner is just trying to keep up with the pace
yeah,
of
and I think being open and sort of connected, you know, not shutting youth out, not sort of like thinking, I think it's not growing long in the tooth or like bitter or any, you know, you got to be like, stay youthful and sort of, you know,
just having that respect, I think, for new ways of living and being. And
like I've got a 17-year-old that works for me. He's one of the best members of staff I've ever had, because he's so, and actually there doesn't feel like there's that much of an age gap between us, because we're embracing each other's world with a mutual respect. So
absolutely,
you know, we can learn just as much from each other.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's a really important attitude to have. You know, I think there's a lot of the, you know, perhaps old school business owners are very stuck in their ways. And I think that presents an opportunity, certainly for people that are more agile, to come through and steal the attention from some of those older businesses, which I think is very, very exciting. I think that's something we're seeing a lot at the moment is, you know, these older, longer established brands that, you know, perhaps have got many chains across the UK, for example, are now really starting to struggle and fall down to some of the smaller competitors that are much more agile, much more interested, much more quick. And all of a sudden you're seeing like, you know, like things like Jamie Oliver's restaurants have recently, you know, struggled to and ended up closing down. And there's a whole other, you know, list. There's a whole list as long as your arm of all these brands that have been popular for years now are all struggling. And you're seeing all of these new small agile brands coming through that are becoming much more interesting to people because they're playing to all of these trends that are happening and they're moving fast with the world, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah. And certainly I think, like, for me, you know, I'm directly involved, you know, I'm in the fight. So, and I'm an owner, so I can make a decision and I can sort of do it, and I don't have to run it. But whereas I suppose a big company, there's a board of directors, and there'll be lots of disagreements, and there'll be lots of it'll be being pulled in different directions. Whereas,
and again, I think the rules just change. You know, that doesn't have to be how people run big companies. Like, it doesn't have to be how all this stuff's run. Like, it can change, and I think it's going to need to. Like, to grow a business now and to be successful, you have to be very agile. So, you know, you find ways to break that red tape down now. You can't have a board of 20 people that have got to make a decision over the course of 3 or 4 months to do something, because by the time that's changed, by the time they've got there, the ship sailed, you know. I think that's a huge thing we're seeing, not just in restaurants.
Well, this the thing, like right now in this current situation, you know, this lockdown coronavirus, it's like, you know, like big companies, the reason I'm still open is because I've got a business partner as well, and like I said, and the young worker I've got, it's just us three. So all the sort of part-time members we had were all students. They obviously went home, so that was, we didn't have to lay anyone off. So we were able to adapt so well, and instantly, like I said, we were small and agile. We were able to just. And that's a real sort of fighting advantage.
This whole situation has really done that in all the areas of business, to be honest. Being able, I mean, even like from my own perspective, similar sort of situation. You know, a lot of the work that I do's always been remotely. My team's been remote, so it's just having that ability to adapt quickly has really served us well. And I know a lot of business owners very well. But I think, you know, the old-fashioned styles of businesses. You know, it's not to say that everyone can necessarily be put in that same category, because there are business owners that are just struggling for a whole vast array of reasons. You know, it's certainly not the fact that, you know, only the agile are going to survive, because there's a lot of business owners who are very agile who are still struggling now. There's absolutely no doubt about it, especially in the hospitality industry. But I think partly is also the attitude of people as well. You know, the people that I've spoken to, certainly business owners I've spoken to, there seems to be two attitudes. It's like, right, how do we do this? How do we adapt? How do we change and transition quickly, and you know, come up with a new idea or a new way of working that's going to be beneficial? And then you've got the other side of the fence that are just kind of hiding in the corner and hoping this will all blow over.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think I've seen a few businesses actually that are independent, that obviously none of their staff really want to work, and actually I think there's a little bit of like, some of them are kind of couldn't wait for the excuse to have the time off. But but the owners aren't willing to get in there and just open up and work themselves. So whereas I am, and I think that's the difference. It's like,
well, that says a lot. Yeah.
I am willing to do it, and I can do it, and it's almost like I am the best person to do it. Like, we are the best people to do what we're doing right now. So it's like, in that sense, I think, like I said, I've seen a few other, they're just not open. And I'm thinking, well, you could do something. You could do a scaled down menu, a kind of like,
absolutely right.
I know if I had to, I could sell one type of burger and I could do it on my own if I had to, you know. So
I've seen some amazing ideas coming out of the restaurant trade though recently. Like, I've seen restaurants literally selling their raw ingredients in a box with
exactly. They're adapting,
like
aren't they?
I've seen one.
They can.
It's great, and you know, some of the innovation that's coming out, I think will actually stay with us after this, all this craziness.
And I think there's a big respect sort of going around for independence right now, and people are very much more like I can sort of feel that people are supporting us because we're independent and we're still going through a time where it's kind of like quite hard to keep going. Like, even like if it's just on a motivational level, it's quite, because there's all this uncertainty. I think you've got a lot of people that think, well, what's the point? What's going to happen afterwards? Like,
I think that's it. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, if you start thinking about it too much, it's scary. Like, you know, you don't know where are we going to be in 6 months? Where are we going to be in a year? Who knows, really, at the moment? Every week.
But then, you know, like a meteor could hit the Earth tomorrow. So
exactly.
You could always think that. But
exactly.
But
yeah.
If you did think like that, you would literally do nothing. But
no, that's the way to be. I think you've got to just, you know, wake up each morning, each week, and say, right, what do we need to do to be the best we can in this situation? Look at it positively, and try and get, you know, do everything we can to get through it. I think that's the only thing you can do, right? And either you maybe you won't get through it. Maybe everything will crumble.
Yeah, I mean, it is like you've got to live it like it's your last day, but also, you know, like still kind of like plan like you're gonna carry on. It's sort of a weird. You got to be sort of balanced between the two, I think. So you've got to sort of like be in the moment, live it like it's the last day, have fun, but then also, you know, think there is a future for everything.
Yeah,
because I think having the more negative view. Yeah,
you guys had takeaway stuff. You were doing takeaway before, right, and delivery. Before.
It was always. I kind of branded it around takeout first.
Right. Okay.
Like, I made sure the seating was sort of like just some stools and a sort of like bars and benches. And I branded it Diner Takeout because I knew, because of how small it was. And it was funny, where I'd worked in sort of restaurants, I sort of had a bit of enough of working in restaurants and wanted the sort of more fast action and more sort of like, you know, you want to sort of get when you got small premises and go, well, how am I going to do the numbers? And it's like, well, you can do it mainly with takeout, because it was more geared up to be a takeout, but also welcoming enough to be a diner. And then more and more people would sort of like, it's like, as people obviously heard about it, you'd get like a sort of family of four that didn't quite get, I think, the concept. They would go, can we book a table? I'm like, no, we don't book table, you just turn up.
Yeah.
And then they want a knife and fork, and I'm a bit like, no, you eat a burger with a hand. You don't use a knife and fork. You cut a burger in half. I think anyone actually that cuts a burger in half, I think they know what they're doing. If you're eating it with a knife and fork, I'm a bit like, it's kind of not street food anymore. It's like,
no.
You wouldn't do that on the street, would you? You wouldn't walk around with a plate and a knife and fork. If you're in your hands.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's new, you know, maybe a fork, but you know, a burger is designed for your hands. So,
absolutely.
So,
yeah. No, I can't stand seeing people trying to eat a burger with a knife and fork. It's not good.
Get in there, get messy.
Yeah. Get those hands dirty. You know, sometimes I've seen the ones with the gloves sometimes as well. People have the gravy ones with the gloves. That's always a good one. The super messy ones. But yeah, I mean, I think so. I guess from your perspective, you know, the transition during this sort of lockdown, COVID kind of crisis has been a little bit more seamless. But I mean, what are some of the big challenges that you faced, like, as a result of all this? Because I do, as much as I don't want to talk too much about it, I think it is a hot topic at the moment. Now, what are some of the challenges that you specifically kind of faced when all this lockdown stuff kicked in?
Not a huge amount, to be honest. I think, like, I would say we were quite intuitive, almost like not saw it coming, but definitely were prepared for the situation. But not that, like, it's not like there was a prediction of the situation, but I think intuitively maybe we did, because we'd already built our own app. I think more and more we were, like I said, we're sort of ground troops in the fight, and we're owners. So, and I'm the one that makes everything. I'm the one that sort of like does all these bits.
I suppose that's one of your big benefits, really, is actually being someone who is actually prepared to,
and that's what it's about. It's being prepared, like, sort of mentally, and also, more than anything, as well as, and like I said, it's your ability to adapt within any given situation, which will make you, survive. Like, and like I said, what are the alternatives? You just sort of stop and just sort of crawl up in a ball. It's like that.
You've got to do something, right? I mean,
you adapt. It's what you do. It's like it's how you survive. You adapt, and it's the people that with the ability to adapt, sort of, the best will kind of ride higher, I think.
Do you feel like this situation is going to kind of change the way that the restaurant industry works for the long term?
Well, I think it's definitely going to change the world, because I don't see how, like, people talk about it going back to normal. I don't think there will be there'll be a new normal. That's what will be.
Yeah, that's what
I don't think it can go back to normal, because if a microscopic organism can essentially take down a system, that system needs to be looked at a bit harder. Reassessed. Basically.
It does feel like we've been living very blindly on a knife edge for a very long time without realizing that the risk.
Well, I think that's why people think it's, there's lots of conspiracies involved, because obviously it was too easily took down. And I'm thinking maybe that's why. I mean, there could be some conspiracies. So, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole other podcast.
Like Joe Rogan for those sort of podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't like to buy into them too much, but I wouldn't, it's like believe nothing but question everything type of.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I think it's definitely made me think about even my own business, which is not, in marketing, is like how I structure it moving forward. Because, I had a lot of these ideas that I wanted to, focus a lot more on having a kind of location and things like this. And then you start to think, well, actually, that makes me way less agile, actually, and puts a whole new risk within my business. And I think, from a restaurant perspective, having that ability to be adaptive with takeaway, with delivery, with, eat in, having all of these different kind of areas, and making sure almost that your business has got various different, within the business, having these different areas of profit.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So if all the restaurants that perhaps are just focusing on eat in and have never done takeaway before, or have got no intention of trying to do any kind of online stuff, for example, that without realizing, they've kind of ended up in this situation now where something's come along, totally said, right, you can't work this way anymore. Now,
yeah, well, it's kind of like it's a little bit new world, sort of old world, and it's sort of new world's trying to break away. The old world's trying to sort of hang on to an old world, and I think that's why you see I think a lot of division as well because of that. And I think I've seen a few restaurants that have sort of think, oh right, well now we're gonna have to do takeaway, and it's like they're a bit flustered with it all because they weren't ever prepared for it, or never really thought about it or sort of embraced it. And that's the thing. That's why I'd always want that balance of like, okay, that's why I want the sort of casualness of like the casual dining. I do love sort of Michelin style cuisine, and I really like the artistry, but it's kind of mad because we're all gonna just eat it and it all comes out the same way, and all this effort, and actually you can get some sort of good, sort of wholesome, simple kind of, but nice little touches, and it can be like a very sort of tasty, like most chefs I know love a good burger. It's a kind of like a go-to. A lot of chefs, in fact, I think outside of their realms, they love really good street food or like good quality fast food, and that was always like my philosophy. I just liked good quality, fresh fast food, not rubbish fast food, basically.
Well, and I think the way that people live has just changed so much as well. You know, more people work from home now. More people are always in. Well, everyone's always in a rush, right? No, not a lot of people have got time to sit down for 3
Everyone wants
hours.
it now, don't they? And they want it like convenience.
And it's not to say there's no place, like you say, for these, you know, higher end Michelin star restaurants. Of course there is. There absolutely is. And I love all types of food for sure. But I do think that, you know, you have to also pay attention to the way that people's behaviours are changing as well, and the way, you know.
Well, that's the thing. It's, you know, it's within that now. I've seen, like, so I'd say on the bottom end of food, you would maybe put as a franchise in terms of quality, you'd maybe put some, you know, like a McDonald's or so, you know, something along those lines,
Yes.
and then you'd have a Michelin star restaurant, and both of them are closed right now. So
Very
like the
interesting. Yeah. So, and it's like you guys that are sitting in the middle somewhere, not necessarily in the middle, but yeah, you're kind of almost serving both ends of those markets in a sense.
There's I purposely have put in. It's like I've gone to make a fine diner rather than fine dining sort of thing. But with that sort of like sort of guilty sort of like, you know, sloppy burger vibe, but with there is touches of real refinement in there that, you know, that I learned from the restaurant trade sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, you don't want to be unrelatable to your, you know, like you'd want to convert someone that is used to a McDonald's, and they go, wow, that tastes like a gourmet version of that, you know. So you kind of that again, that was a bit of the philosophy.
I think that comes down a lot going back to like the brand stuff, really being able to appeal to the, you know, certain audiences and certain people in a number of different ways. So you've got, you know, the people that are perhaps into their ingredients. You've got that covered because you can tell the story about where the burger came from, how the sauce is made. You know, the people that will like the kind of the messy, quick, sit down, fast food. I'm in a rush. Give me some food, good food quickly. Again, you can kind of cater for that area or that kind of market. And I think having that like diversification, especially now within a brand in the modern world, is just like super important. That's not just restaurants. It's like goes for anything. It's like, how do you, because there's all these little niches now, these little pockets of audiences, right? There's certain, you know, there's vegans, there's certain people that like, you know, certain types of, you know, gourmet burgers or high end burgers. And it's like, how do you create something that all of these people are going to find something in that they're going to warm to, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think as well, you kind of not stray too far from what you actually are, because I could quite easily like put on like a steak night, a fish and chip night, this night, and I could easily do that, and it kind of fits with a burger well, but then you kind of dilute what you are.
Yeah, it's like, where are you going? What's your identity kind of thing? You've got to keep that. It's like keeping that identity, but yeah.
Like, yeah, I just think it's, you know, having a good balance of like having enough variety in there to be, you know, draw in and cater for a sort of wider audience and wider tastes, but also still within the realms where it all sort of feels right under that brand.
I think it's about having your like sort of like your brand values, right? The things you actually stand for. Like you stand for good ingredients, you stand for, you know, creating amazing eye-catching burgers, you know, doing it differently to, you know, perhaps a lot of the other smaller or bigger, in some cases, burger restaurants. I think you've got to have those clear values, it's almost like a rule set. Right, we don't change what we do. This is what we do. This is how we do it. But finding ways to cater for all of these different interests and stuff underneath that, you know?
Yeah, and I think, and every now and again, I throw in something experimental, and it's funny because there's some burgers on there that aren't necessary to my taste, and I wouldn't actually ever put that in a burger to eat myself, but I understand I'm not making it for me, I'm making it for them, sort of thing. And if you can't sort of mess with people's choice, I don't think. It's like, and you can't ignore it. You can't stubbornly be like, oh yeah, well, that's not my favorite. You can't let your ego dictate that, you know. It's like, so, you know, so sometimes I put something on, like most recently, the carbonara smoked beef sausage. And that was only because my business partner brought, he likes to sometimes just buy things and turn up with them.
Right.
Which sometimes is really good, because sometimes I it's almost like a bit of a sort of ready, set, cook challenge where you're given an ingredient and you have to do something with it. Not he doesn't do that intentionally, but sometimes I think, oh yeah, I thought I'd try these. I'd be like, why have we got so many? So then, but with a particular one, I thought, I know there was something I always wanted to try, and I thought, oh yeah, so I'll try that now. And it's been like so popular that I'm a bit like, well, that may have to stay now because that's been really, really popular. So if it continues to be popular, like I said, I will keep it. And it's not like it was only like sometimes I only intend things to be a special, but if they work, then they work. You always have to listen to that. You can't.
Absolutely. I think that's important to just pay attention, like you say, it's not all about what you think you would like. It's, you are actually serving a marketplace full of different tastes and interests. And, I guess sometimes things that you just don't ever think would work. And again, it's about adapting, isn't it? It's about having that ability to adapt.
Oh,
and
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Taking feedback and say, even if there's something you think's great, if no one's buying it or everyone keeps telling you it's crap, then, you need to listen.
Yeah.
You can't just blindly sort of saying, well, this is what we serve, we're not changing. If you've got
it's really hard actually when you like to knock things off. Like when I first opened, I purposely made them I think had about 4 more burgers on there, and to be honest, I probably had 20 more in the bank to sort of like in the reserves, and it was really hard to sort of like take, because I thought, well, what I'm going to do, because especially this sort of place where it's about a bit more speed. And obviously, no matter what, though, when you're doing quality and you're cooking it fresh, it takes how long it takes, and that's the kind of end of it, But there is ways of sort of shaving off seconds here and there, and one of them would be to kind of scale your menu down, and it does feel like sacrificing. Just thinking, and then you remember this, like, this. I used to do this fish finger one, and these 2 people in particular, and one of them was like an older retired couple. And she was like, "Oh, I love it," sort of thing. And another person was, I think, my brother, and there was one other person. Oh, my friend that has like sickle cell. So I always sort of look after him, but I always sort of keep it. I'd keep it in stock even afterwards, just for. But then it just sort of became a bit too much of a stress, And it's like, and it's really hard to sacrifice that, and like.
I think that's the thing that I would struggle with the most if I was running. I mean, I used to have a catering company, so kind of we used to do a lot of street food in like festivals and stuff like that, and that was something I always struggled with, was being able to pick like 3 things instead of 10.
Yeah, well, yeah, so yeah, in a kind of festival, you do have to have like 1 really good thing, or sort of 3. It's like 3, and if you're being really ambitious, you might go 5, but depending on what they are. But yeah, when you kind of have like, I'm essentially running a sort of like restaurant menu as a takeout, it can be quite, but sometimes you get like this really nice flow where people have a certain thing in a certain order, and it flows out quite nicely. But then all you got to do is have a few changes. Like sometimes you look up all the tickets, you've got 6 tickets, and when you see the red within the blacks, that's it's all like changes. And you're like, it just throws you off. You're like, so that's that one, and so everyone. But I think good communication in between yourselves in the kitchen will always sort of like prevail and sort of make things. Communication I always think is key.
Yeah.
In any kind of relationship. So yeah, I think, and that's why I always teach my young apprentice. It's like, just communicate. And now he's really got on board with that, and we're flowing. Like I said, he's adapted really well.
Yeah, nice.
During this situation, so it has made things a lot easier. And because it's we is that you hear a lot of that right now. We're in this together. It's like, well, us 3, we really are in it together. And yeah, it was nice to sort of see where it all is in a few years. If we are all still together, and we'll look back on it, I think with quite a fond. Sort of like,
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of that, and I think, I mean, what would you say are sort of like because it seems that that staff sort of side, and this is something that comes up all the time, as you can probably imagine, with restaurant owners, is like the staff's like a massive thing. Would you say that having the right staff is that one of the biggest factors for you?
I would say it is the biggest factor. Because like I said, I'm quite hands-on. I can do everything myself, and if I can't do it, work out how to do it. And you know, I'm never afraid of that. I'm not afraid of like technology. I'm not afraid of, you know, as long as I've got, the main thing is like time as well to obviously do everything.
Yeah.
You can't you know, you can't duplicate yourself. So the idea is to, you know, make sure you invest yourself in the staff, but some staff just aren't interested, or they want to do their own thing for their own sort of, you know, egotistical reasons, or they don't like being worked under someone. And that's the thing. I don't believe in that kind of ruling over people and, or being like on a higher ground. It's like, we're all the same. We're all people. So we don't have to, it doesn't have to, it just so happens that I own the place. But some people, they are just at work to get money. And it is just a job to some people. And you can't, I don't think there's any amount of training that you can sort of get. You know, some people have always got a thing of like, right, well, I'm going to get what I can out of this job in terms of financially. And then, or if something better comes along, or if, you know, I'll move on like a flash, you know. So again, you have to sort of just accept that and be open to that. But equally, I'd say the biggest thing about, I think, a business is staff. It is like so key.
And have you found that a struggle? Like, obviously being quite hands-on yourself and being very clear, you clearly had a very clear vision about what you've wanted to do with the brand, where you've wanted to take it, even down to like the menu design. Did you ever struggle to relinquish some of that control to members of staff as you've kind of grown the business?
Yeah, it's like that, but also it kind of has taught me to let go a little bit, because there's no other way you could do it. You just stress yourself out way too much. But it's like I said, when you see standards drop because of it, that is very stressful and frustrating, because it's obviously it's and it's not a case of like my way or the highway, but at the same time it kind of is. Like,
so it's kind of like, how do you find ways that you can, you know, successfully implement your thinking into your team?
Exactly. And that's the thing, I guess. And that's why for me it's about, I've always said this all through my life. You could be doing any job, like litter picking. You think if you were doing litter picking with some of your best mates and some other new people, say you all got punished for something. I think you remember doing it at school, had to do litter picking as sort of my punishment. And you get paired up with a couple of people that you wouldn't normally been with. And sometimes it's like, it's not like, it doesn't feel like a punishment at all, because you're having fun, you're in a good team. And so I think, you know, staff is key. And sometimes you might have a member of staff that isn't particularly the best at like doing certain things, but they sort of uplift the whole energy of the place, which
massive.
If that's having that effect, then that's their role, kind of thing. That's what they're, you know, and like you can find that balance between all those sort of members of staff.
I think that's important as well. Is actually, like, I guess as a business owner, that's an important point you made there. Is like seeing how much more a member of staff is than just a number that, like, you know, like a robot in the system. Like
exactly.
And what does this human being actually bring? What does their personality bring? What does their attitude bring? You know, what does their creative flair bring to my business? And how can I use that to grow more, rather than saying, oh, you're just a cog in the system, this is your job, get over here and do it. That's how you burn someone out quickly, right? If you
you certainly don't want to suckle their energy from them. You know, you want to sort of harness it and you know, like pull it out of them and project it in a certain area, or you know, or like, and that's the thing, when you see potential. And actually, when someone is really open to sort of like your teachings, or it makes teaching so much more effortless and more fun. And that's when you know you've got someone good, when it's you know, I've been there before where I've worked for someone else, because they ran it a certain way, it was always felt like a battle. And then obviously there was like a strange dynamic of staff, and then so any new staff that came in, what's their example going to be? It's going to be from elders, or it's going to be from owners, or it's going to be from how owners treat other members of staff. And then that's just toxic, and it just creates this really, and it's, it's so hard. You're trying to sort of undo that toxic work they're doing, and they're just almost not like, and there's, you think it just becomes very draining, you know that. But then equally, when you get someone really good, it becomes very energizing, very
Absolutely.
like.
Yeah, I think people make a massive difference just in that, like that is, in my opinion, yeah, one of the biggest drivers for success in a business, especially if you're trying to scale the business up, is just having a team and feeling like you're part of a team, not feeling like you're ruling down on people as a business.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I don't want to sort of have. I think you have to sometimes have leaders. But it doesn't mean those leaders are above, you know, they're not above people. So, and generally, you know, a lot of leaders, it's people with the more experience.
And also, so the leadership's about creating respect. You know, it's about having a two-way street of respect between your staff and you, and leading the way, but also at the same time empowering your team to come with you on the journey. You know.
Well, yeah, it's, you know, it said like young people, they don't necessarily follow advice, they follow example. So you have to kind of be the good example, and I think when you are. And it's funny, I've had members of staff that obviously aren't the best example. And even though, say, a younger member of staff can see that they aren't the person to follow in terms of leadership or like their, you know, the method of how they do stuff, they can't help but pick up on some of their traits because they're already following their example. You know, it's monkey see, monkey do a little bit. Like, so. So definitely that staff, I would definitely is the biggest, you know. So I'm sure if I had one little grill selling 20 burgers a day, just doing 2 different types of burgers on my own, that'd be a breeze. I wouldn't have a problem. There would be hardly any like complications, I feel.
Probably a bit less profit though, maybe.
and also it doesn't really feel like you're I don't know, you kind of, I think it's quite good when you're supplying like work and creating a kind of dynamic.
Yeah, that's what entrepreneurship is about, right? Creating you know, being part of that growing economy. Absolutely.
Yeah, and just sort of like, I just think creating this sort of dynamic of like, where, you know, most people don't really want to work the jobs they're in or be part of this system. You know, I think loads of people would always want to be on holiday, you know, but the way it's set up at the moment, that's not happening, you know, unless you kind of get a bit of land, build a shed and grow your own vegetables, and that's all you do. But like, you've got to be willing to do that. So yeah, I think if you are part of that system, kind of get on board with it as much as you can, and sort of mold it into how, you know, kind of this fun place to be, the workplace, make it a fun place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that comes back to going, you know, doing stuff that actually makes you, that you're passionate about as well, you know, in whether it's
exactly. And I
launch a business or work, whatever.
Do it if I wasn't, you know, passionate, or it felt just so draining, I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. And I think that's again coming back to like the staff. You need to make sure that you're hiring people that actually do have a passion, do have an interest, aren't just turning up for money. And I guess, you know, these things take a lot of time as well to develop, you know, to find those.
You kind of have to switch people out, you know. It's a bit like you know, like a football team, I suppose, when they, you know, you could be this star player, but you just don't gel with the team, and you just don't, and they get sort of sold on. They might fit perfectly with another team, you know. It's kind of, they might be this superstar player, but in that team they're not, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, great point. Yeah. So we're coming towards the end of the show now. Like, I just wanted to try and understand a little bit about what's next for Magoo. Have you got anything in the pipeline, any sort of new stuff that we can look out for?
Well, we just got the street food sort of stand. We've done a few things like that unbranded before, years ago, like me and my business partner Dave, and we used to do like a big street food thing at a club called Motion in Bristol, which we actually helped start musically as well years ago, which is quite. So when sort of ended up doing music and food in the realms of together, that for me, that was perfect. You know, that was like my 2 constant things I've done all my life coming together. So yeah, I mean, there's things like that, that if anywhere I can combine music and food together, I'll definitely be looking at that. And like I said, this street food thing that we currently do every month at the university on the farmers market, which obviously isn't open at the moment because of the situation. And yeah, possibly another site that we've kind of already got.
Awesome.
So yeah, and you know, and just I kind of like let things. I like kind of just like go with the way sort of thing of, you know, and kind of follow the path it takes, and the more natural and the more flowing it can be in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's definitely focus there to get growth, but you're just kind of you're kind of seeing what opportunities come out the other side of all this madness.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, now it's you kind of just have to. I think now you could sort of plan for it.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, but at the same time, you're a bit like, you got to be willing to have those plans upset, sort of
absolutely.
thing, or not even happen.
Ever. Yeah.
So it's like you got to be sort of optimistic, but also kind of realistic, and just be like, that's the thing. I think a lot of people that have probably got stuff planned have had to kind of just put it on hold.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is a big lesson, I think, for a lot of us, is actually, you know, you can set your plans in stone as much as you like. Sometimes it's not going to go your way.
No, well, that's why, like I said, it is good to just follow the natural order in terms of, and like, you know, follow the flow of things, because then, you know, if something doesn't go to plan, your plans haven't been ruined because you didn't necessarily have one.
That's a very interesting anecdote. Yeah. So have no plan, just have a plan.
Yeah, kind of. But I think it's having like a vision and throwing it forward and then heading towards it a little bit, rather than.
I think just like what you're saying there, it's just about being prepared to transition, being prepared to be agile, like we've said a couple of times. Is just being, you know, understanding that, you know, things might not go the way you want them to, and when they don't, be prepared to change, be prepared to, you know, take that.
And don't be afraid to take that risk, because you know, life's boring if you're just not taking risks.
Absolutely.
It's kind of, I'd say take the risk. You know, it's like, as long as you're not messing other people's lives up.
Yeah.
I think kind of just like and like I said, if it doesn't work out, or, you know, sometimes it's like putting something in a burger would be considered a bit of a risk in terms of like, it might be strange to do that, and it might, people, you know, you might be ridiculed for it, but at the same time, I think that's what's special about burgers. You kind of can put anything in it, and because the moment it becomes in between a burger bun, it's with, you know, it is a burger, so you can sort of put anything in it. You can put any meal in a burger and it'd be a something burger. So
I'm sure there's like a thoughtful quote I could come up with now where it was like transition between how business is like a burger, but I can't quite get it in my head yet. But awesome. Well, Leon, we're at the end now, so just firstly, just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for, you know, all of your honesty and insights into the restaurant trade. I know that you're obviously super busy at the moment, so I do really appreciate your time. Also, I appreciate everyone for listening in. I'm sure that everyone got as much value as I certainly did from this. So yeah, thanks very much for your time. Thanks everyone for listening, and I hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe we'll do it again when it's all over.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Wicked. Cheers.
Nice one.
Thanks for listening to Bite Britain. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Bite Britain, and also subscribe to us and watch the video version of this interview on YouTube, so you can get updates on future releases and, more importantly, exclusive opportunities to win prizes from our awesome guests.